Yahweh Shemel Shah, Barakatah Yahweh Shah, Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shah.
And the sons of strangers shall build up thy walls, and their kings shall minister unto thee. For in my wrath I smote thee, but in my favor have I had mercy on thee.
Because all the blessings that we're going to get, which is entailing the kingdom of heaven. Isaiah the 60th chapter, I'm going to start at the 10th verse and read on down. It says, and the sons of strangers shall build up thy walls, and their king shall minister unto thee. For in my wrath I smote thee, but in my favor have I had mercy on thee. So the sons of strangers, that's talking about the actual strangers, the other nations, shall build up thy walls. We're going to have them in slavery. So they're going to be building the kingdom of heaven. Because we're not building nothing. We're not lifting a hand to move nothing. It says, for in my wrath I smote thee, but in my favor have I had mercy on thee. Therefore thy gates shall be open continually. They shall not be shut day nor night, that men may bring unto thee the forces of the Gentiles. That's talking about the actual Gentiles. We're going to take all of their substance, and that their kings may be brought.
And the sons of strangers shall build up thy walls, and their kings shall minister unto thee. For in my wrath I smote thee, but in my favor have I had mercy on thee.
Barakatah Yahweh Shah, Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shah.
For the nation and kingdom that will not serve thee shall perish, yea, those nations shall be utterly wasted. Verse 13. And the glory of Lebanon shall come unto thee, the fir tree, the pine tree, the box together to beautify the place of my sanctuary, and I will make the place of my feet glorious. So the land of Israel, the land of Jerusalem is going to be made glorious. It's going to be made glorious once again. The kingdom is going to be built up. We had a taste of that during the time of Solomon's reign, which was for about 40 years. Verse 14, the sons also of them that afflicted thee shall come bending unto thee, and they that despise thee shall bow themselves down at the soles of thy feet, and they shall call thee the city of the Lord. The word Zion means monument, the monument of the Holy One of Israel. Whereas thou hast been forsaken and hated, so that no man went through thee, I will make thee an eternal excellency, a joy of many generations. Thou shalt also suck the milk of the Gentiles, and shall suck the breast of kings, meaning we're going to take all their substance. And thou shalt know that I am the Lord thy power, the Lord and thy Savior and thy Redeemer, the mighty one of Jacob. For brass I will bring thee gold, and for iron I will bring thee silver, and for wood brass, and for stones iron. And I will make thy officers peace, and thine exactors righteousness. Violence shall no more be heard in thy land, wasting nor destruction within thy borders, but thou shalt call thy walls salvation, and thy gates praise. The sun shall no more thy light by day, neither for brightness shall the moon give light unto thee, but the Lord shall be unto thee an everlasting light, and the power thy glory. The sun shall no more go down, meaning our kingdom is not going to go down. In other words, once we get back in power, we're going to be in power forever. The sun is never going to go down on our kingdom again. The sun is never going to set on our kingdom. We're going to always shine, and we're going to always be in that glory once we get into the kingdom of heaven. There's no more going back into slavery under the other nations. Esau's not going to rise back up and put us in captivity. Ham, Japheth, Ishmael, none of the other nations are going to rise up and take us down ever again. When we get on top this time, we're going to remain on top. Neither shall thy moon withdraw itself, for the Lord shall be thine everlasting light, and the days of thy mourning shall be ended. So no more mourning, no more crying, no more vexation of spirit, no more weeping, no more hopelessness because of the condition that we're in as Israelites right now. Verse 21, thy people also shall be all righteous. They shall inherit the land forever. The branch of my planting, the work of my hands, that I may be glorified. Verse 22, a little one shall become 1,000. This is in the kingdom. So what is this talking about? We're going to have sex. Again, like I said, the 2/3 that are going to pass in this destruction, the 2/3 are going to come back through the 1/3 that make it. The Lord said, 2/3 shall be cut off and die, and the third will I bring through the fire. It says, a little one shall become 1,000, and a small one a strong nation. I, the Lord, will hasten it in his time.
All right. Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shah Bahashem, Kakadash. Double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples to us younger brothers. And peace and blessing salutations to the hopeful lake out there pushing his word and the truth and in sincerity across the four winds in the name of Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shah Bahashem, Kakadash. Pushing to get up out there. Shalom to the hopeful elect, the believers, the listeners who have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai. All right. And what I want to get into this morning, all right, dealing with morning news and prophecy, all right, is back at it. You know, they right back at it, man. All right, dealing with this war. All right, can't stop, won't stop. Because this is prophecy, man. You know, and what we're seeing is the Lord, all right, perform his will in the earth. Okay, the Lord doing his pleasure in the earth as we always get into. All right. And the Lord is showing that he is. Okay. Because yesterday, last night, the night before last, there was this big deal about, ceasefire, 2-week ceasefire, negotiations had opened back up and all these different things. Okay. But before, all right, yesterday afternoon, the ceasefire had begun to fall apart. All right. And what we have to understand, these ceasefires, they're extremely fragile. Okay, especially when you're dealing with the small hats. The small hats never honored any ceasefire. Okay. They never honored any ceasefire. Okay. And like we said yesterday, it's a fragile ceasefire. All right, because that means in order for a ceasefire to hold, that means all parties have to stop hostilities. And the small hat's not going to do it because they have a role in prophecy to draw, all right, being the least of the flock, to draw, okay, everyone into this war. Okay, so the small hat's going to keep America engaged in this war, man. And also, you also have market manipulation. We'll go into that as well. How, Trump and his cronies, are able to manipulate the markets and make a profit. But then on another scale, you have the elites, all right, playing both sides of the war, okay, and they bet on, all right, the winning side, okay, because as we know, the small hats, all right, which the elites, when you go into the Rothschilds, okay, that's the main family that's behind, all right, the small hats, the Greater Israel Project, and these particular things, okay? And they own America, all right, outright. And that's why America doesn't do things that benefit Americans, okay? America does things to benefit, all right, the elite banking families, man, mainly the Rothschilds, man, okay, with your small hats, okay? You go back to the Balfour Declaration, okay? It was written from this British, all right, parliament member, okay, which is like a congressman, in America, or a senator, wrote to one of the Rothschilds, all right, giving them, okay, a legal, okay, claim, a legal claim to the land, all right, of Palestine, which is our land, with those small hats and Ishmaelites, Arabs, okay, they've been fighting for their land for centuries. But at the end of the day, that's our land, okay. And what we're seeing now is these devils, have begun to wage a war, okay, and able to push, a global reset, all right, to expand, the borders of Israel with this Greater Israel Project and separate technocracy, where there's certain things that's working against them, man. And these devils are having to pivot, okay? And what these devils do, they begin to manipulate, all right, these events, even if it don't go exactly how they want, all right, they at least are in a position to have an economic impact, all right, during this war, okay? Because there's two different scoreboards. There's the military aspect of it, okay, whereas uh, we keep up with the alliances and the day to day, because it's leading to, okay, the is leading to nuclear destruction, but it's going to be a build up to that. And then it's an economic aspect, and that's the scoreboard that the elites are playing on, the economic aspect. Okay, so you got the nations battling for positions militarily, all right, and you have the elites, okay, manipulating what's happening, okay, to cause an economic shift, a global economic shift. We'll get into, these things of Ratazar this morning. So what I want to get here, and I'm not surprised at all with the small hats, ended. Okay, the ceasefire, man. They always violate it, man. All right, and there's too much going on. See, like I say, when we hear a ceasefire, man, that just meant to be a pause in hostilities. Okay, but you got to have everybody agree. Okay, and there's too much tension. There's too many different parties, okay, involved for to have any type of ceasefire when you have this many fronts going on in the war at the same time. So let's go. Let's go here. All right, to the book of Numbers 23 and 19. It says, "The Most High is not a man that he should lie. All right, neither the Son of Man that he should repent. Have he said, and shall he not do it? Or have he spoken, and shall he not make it good?" So we're seeing the Most High making good on his word, man. Okay? The least of the flock shall draw them out, man. The small hats ain't gonna let America get out of this, man. And America don't want to get out. They want to reset. They really want to reset themselves, all right, and really settle in, because they see there's gonna be a long war, a longer war than what they expect. So they want to really reset themselves, because America went in thinking it was going to be Venezuela 2.0, maybe with a little more difficulty, but they thought, all right, they rolled the dice on this being a Venezuela 2.0, and it didn't happen like that, okay, which would have been a major win for the West, okay, and it would have given, like I say, the West, control of the whole board as far as energy, okay, but they gambled and lost. You see, and now they're involved in this, all right, extended war, and they didn't prepare for that in the beginning. Okay, so now they want to reposture. They're trying to get some type of relief, some type of time out to try to reposture themselves and get ready for a long war. Okay, so what we're seeing, as the scriptures say, the Most High is not a man that he should lie. All right, and that's why we can explain exactly what was happening through prophecy, okay, through the words of Yahweh Bashem Al-Shah. You see, these are the Lord's words. Okay, we're just expounding on it as they're happening in real time, through the view of the Holy Spirit. Okay, real quick, go Jeremiah 30:1. It says, "The word that came to Jeremiah from the Lord, saying, Thus speaketh the Lord power of Israel, saying, Write thee all the words that I have spoken unto thee in a book." Okay, so when you go into the Bible, it's a collection, okay, of words of the Most High, okay, accounts, prophecies, okay, certain histories, okay, it's all inspired by Yahweh Bashem Al-Shah. You see, these are the Most High's words, okay, so we're just speaking the words of the Heavenly Father, okay, let me see, via the Holy Spirit, okay, and this understanding was made available through the sacrifice of Yahushua. You know, the scripture speak about how Yahushua was worthy to unloose the seals. Okay, so the Lord from the beginning, He created prophets. Okay, that would expound on His will. Okay, that would expound on prophecy what the Lord was getting ready to do in the earth, man. You know, so this is why we're in the spirit. The prophets have been set over the nations. You see, when you go here, it says Jeremiah 1:4. Then the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee, and before thou camest forth out of the womb, I sanctified thee and ordained thee a prophet unto the nations, man. You know, because of course it begins with prophesying to our people of repentance, okay, and the judgment that's to come, okay. But then we also what tell these nations what's their role within the will of the Lord. Okay, May God, which is Russia, you gotta be a chief prince. Iran, you gotta be that wild boar. Okay, you Gulf Arab nations. Okay, you're gonna have to tighten your ass up and become those dragons of Arabia. Okay, you see, Moab, the kings of the east, y'all gonna have to come forth, man, and get busy with the west. Okay, so the prophets are through the spirit are coordinated. All right, because the prophecies, all right, the Lord has already coordinated His will, so we're just all right telling these nations their role within that, man. Okay, so you keep reading. It says, I'm gonna jump down to verse 10. It says, the Lord put forth His hand and touched my mouth, and the Lord said unto me, Behold, I have put my words in thy mouth, man. So we're speaking the words of Yahweh Bashim Shai. This is His will. It's not us that's right. It's the will of the Lord that's right. Okay, this is the Lord's will. And this is Him showing the world that He is. He just uses us to validate. See, we are the filter. The Most High is not going to talk to you people directly, man. He's not here to talk directly, okay, to the population. No, He always deals with the prophets, man. No one can talk directly to the Most High and live, man. Okay, you see. So the Lord used His prophets to speak His will in the earth, man. What He's going to do, you know. So it's prophecy that was right, you know. Like I say, it's not us. It's prophecy. It's the will of the Lord, which is vessels, man. Okay, verse 10. See, I have this day set thee over the nations and over the kingdom to root out and to pull down. So the Lord is rooting out and pulling down, all right, and to destroy and to throw down, to build and to plant. So the Lord is using the prophets, okay, to pull down and destroy, okay, this current kingdom through speaking prophecies, okay, into existence, man. Okay, just like Moses did to Pharaoh. Moses spoke the plagues into existence, man. The Lord used Moses as a tool to speak His will, all right, into ancient Egypt. And we're doing the same thing now. Okay, Esau, Edom, the new Pharaoh. Okay, through prophecy, man, the Lord has the prophets, okay, pulling down and destroying this kingdom, all right, through what? Through prophesying, man. Okay, and building and planting, all right, the kingdom to come, which is the kingdom of Israel under Yahweh Shah, the throne of David. And you have a remnant, okay, that's going to be delivered, you see, and the part of this transition into a new kingdom. Okay, so as you know, we're shaking the hand at the elites and letting them know it's over. We're also telling our people, look, we got next. Our righteous are we endure. Our kingdom is coming. We're building up our people, okay, through faith, you know, through understanding. You know, we began to move and operate, okay, in righteousness, man, because it's a righteous kingdom that's going to be established, going to be planted, okay, and this wicked kingdom is being thrown down, okay. So let's see, let's go here. Let's get this first video real quick. Yeah, man. So just like you know, we was going into yesterday, man. That ceasefire was fragile as hell, and America can't do nothing with them small hats, man. Okay, America can't do nothing with the small hats, man. So let's yep. So the Strait was open for like, and then even then it was still they had to check in with Iran, so it wasn't just back to how it was before the war. No, there ain't no going back to that. Okay, you gotta check in. All right, you gotta pay that toll, you gotta check in. Okay, you gotta be coordinated by Iranian military. Okay, or ain't no passage. You see? So the Strait was never, back open. Okay. So let's play this.
Completely falls apart within just 24 hours, with the critical Strait of Hormuz. The fragile Iran truce completely falls apart within just 24 hours, with the critical Strait of Hormuz shut down once again. Is Netanyahu sabotaging the ceasefire agreement, deliberately poking Iran to reignite full-scale regional war?
I insisted that the temporary ceasefire with Iran would not include Hezbollah, and we continue to strike it hard.
I think the Iranians thought that the ceasefire included Lebanon, and it just didn't. We never made that promise.
Tehran flexes its strategic muscle as a deadly Israeli assault rocks southern Lebanon in brutal retaliation. Israel launches over 100 devastating attacks in just 10 minutes, leaving more than 100 dead across Lebanon. The US and Iran clash fiercely over completely different versions of the ceasefire agreement terms and conditions. Vice President Vance backs Netanyahu's version unequivocally as Iran draws a firm red line over the Beirut bombardment. Less than 24 hours after the US announced a ceasefire with Iran, Iranian state media reported that the Strait of Hormuz had been shut down again, reversing a key condition of the truce. The complete and safe reopening of the strait was President Trump's stated condition for the 2-week ceasefire, tying the pause in US strikes directly to the free passage of oil shipments. The stunning move came less than 24 hours after the US and Israel publicly backed the truce talks with Iran on March 7th to 8th, raising immediate questions about the deal's stability. The closure happened despite earlier indications that Iran would reopen the vital shipping route as part of the broader agreement, at least for the duration of the 2-week pause. On the night of March 8th to 9th, Iran's press TV reported that an oil tanker was turned away near the strait, underscoring the tightening of maritime controls in the region. The tanker, named Aurora, made an abrupt 180-degree turn at sea and instead returned toward the Persian Gulf rather than continuing through the strait. The US government has stated that the Aurora is a sanctioned vessel, alleging it is used to transport Iranian oil outside the usual commercial channels. According to reports citing the semi-official Fars news agency, Iran's decision to close the strait was framed as a response to Israeli military operations in Lebanon, not solely to the ceasefire terms. Israel has intensified its strikes on Lebanon in recent days, saying it is targeting Hezbollah positions and infrastructure linked to Iranian support. Reports indicate that Israel launched around 100 suspected strikes on Lebanese territory within a 10-minute window on April 8th, suggesting a concentrated, high-intensity campaign. These strikes in Lebanon have reportedly killed over 110 civilians and wounded more than 800 others, drawing sharp condemnation from humanitarian groups. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and US Vice President J.D. Vance have both stated that the America-Iran truce does not apply to Lebanon. The situation has highlighted growing disparities between the sides over whether the ceasefire includes the Lebanon front or only applies to Iran directly. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and US Vice President J.D. Vance have both stated that the America-Iran truce does not apply to Lebanon, treating Hezbollah as a separate conflict. In his public remarks, Netanyahu also warned that Israel could resume full-scale war with Iran at any moment in order to complete the original war goals.
I think the Iranians thought that the ceasefire included Lebanon, and it just didn't. We never made that promise. We never indicated that was going to be the case. What we said is that the ceasefire would be focused on Iran, and the ceasefire would be focused on America's allies, both Israel and the Gulf Arab states. Now, that said, the Israelis, as I understand it, again, I'm supposed to get a fuller report when I get on the plane, have actually offered to be, frankly, to check themselves a little bit in Lebanon because they want to make sure that our negotiation is successful.
Meanwhile,
Yeah, man. In this BS, this whole thing, negotiations, and it was just BS, man. Just another gimmick, by the small hats and, America, political, market manipulation. Okay. But they thought that, and what they're trying to say, well, look, because really, I say the small hats are being destroyed, okay, on both fronts with Iran and Hezbollah. So, this was an attempt, to let Iran bag off, but then let the small hats, just go in it with Hezbollah. But nah, man, it ain't gonna happen like that. Okay, Iran not gonna sit back and let them, attack Lebanon. Okay, when Hezbollah, is fighting on behalf of Iran. So, just a bunch of tackiness. It could be confusion, but to sum things up, it was all some BS. It was mainly market manipulation. It was optics. Making it seem as if, trying to show some type of strength, through American diplomacy, and it backfired again because it just shows that America can't even guarantee a ceasefire, man. Not only are they not able to achieve any military goals against Iran, they can't even uh, they can't even strike a ceasefire, man. Their diplomacy is through. All right, their military capability, okay, is being destroyed. Okay, so just backfire to backfire, man. All right, and America's credibility is just getting worse, and it's in the negatives now, man. It went from low, all right, to zero, to now it's in the negatives, man. Dealing with American credibility, man, and it just it's showing these nations, man. Look, America is not able to be worked with. Okay, America is not capable, all right, of any type of, all right, any type of deal, any type of diplomacy. The only way to deal with America and small hats is war. That's it. That's the message that's going out to these other nations, man. Okay, and how much these bankers are, because like I say, with the war, we have to understand that just like if you do sports betting, well, you can bet before the game and you can bet during the game. Okay, you can make different bets during the game. So it's interesting what Iran is doing now, because I say the elites, they manipulate these certain events because the elites are bankers. They're not generals. Okay, they don't deal with the details of war. All right, they deal with the market manipulation of war. Okay, they deal with resetting systems. Okay, during war. All right, they're not generals, so they're not very effective when it comes to the actual battlefield outcomes of war. All right, now they can hinder the battlefield by, stop financing one side or the other. Okay, but what we have to understand, all right, is Iran has already been the black sheep before the war, so they wasn't getting backing by, all right, these central banks. Okay, before the war, you see, so they're fighting with a lot of in-house weaponry and a lot of things that they get from Russia and China. Now, could Russia and China, if Russia and China stop aiding, all right, Iran, then it would go bad for Iran if they stop getting, the aid from Russia and China, whether it's from China buying oil and also providing intelligence and weapons, and Russia, stop providing intelligence. Okay, then it could get bad for Iran, but that's not going to happen because of what? Prophecy. You see, the elites can't avoid out prophecy. Okay, they're subjugated to try to manipulate within prophecy, man. Okay, but if it was the elites in full control, they would stop China from aiding Iran and Russia from aiding Iran, and then it will get hard for Iran to continue this war. Okay, but because of prophecy's sake, Russia has to be what a chief guard has to be a guard unto Iran. Okay, and China, okay, is a heavy, all right, ally with Russia, man. Okay, the kings of the East, they have to come forth, okay, and go to war. All right, with what the kings of the West, man, America and these small heads, mainly, man. Okay, so let's because he has them small hands, did like 100 strikes. Okay, let's go from there. So let's go here. Yeah, so just like you say, when you sports betting live and the game might go, the game go different than you think, then you're able to put bets on the other side. Like, well, okay, let's try this now. All right. And ultimately, the elites, they still have an economic play that they can pull, which is a global reset. Okay, which they got to do it, because how else are they going to introduce a new currency if they don't crash all these currencies, man? Okay, so let's play a little bit of this. Larry Jones, he gonna talk about a little bit dealing with the market manipulation. Then I got a video to go into that as well. And with the elites, the elites really don't care about the market manipulation, to make money at the stock market. That's the do boys, Trump and his billionaire friends. They're able to do money grab. They're being allowed to do a money grab in the midst of all this, okay, by the elites. The elites want control, okay? And we're going to show the difference, all right? So let's play a little bit of this.
Against Trump. And here's Iran saying, hey, we agreed to a total ceasefire. If you're saying you're going to allow the Zionists to continue to kill the people of Lebanon, sorry, then we're not signing up for that, and stand by for more incoming. The Houthis have already said they're going to continue to fire missiles into Israel as long as they're attacking Lebanon. So yeah, this market manipulation play where, we got pieces at hand, so the stock market goes up, oil prices fall. Again, there are people behind the scenes that are manipulating, that are making money off of this because they have an idea of what's coming. They know that it's not a real, genuine ceasefire.
Wow. Well, how long will it be before, in your view, before hostilities resume? The Iranians have already said they will not tolerate continued hostilities in South Lebanon. I assume they also mean in Gaza.
I would say, let's see, what time is it? 11:30? Yeah, 2 hours. Look, within 12 hours, we could see the missile barrages start again. I do know that we're looking at the flow of U.S. Military air traffic to the region. It hasn't stopped. So you got still what I'd call operational buildup. So I think this is just another ploy on the part of the Trump administration, trying to buy some temporary time, trying to get halt the rise in the price of oil and gas in the United States. And it's going to be a temporary relief, but that's all. It's just temporary. I think what we're going to see is the war will continue, and the economic stranglehold that Iran has on the world will continue, and they're going to use it to their advantage to force other countries to come around to isolate Israel, to finally put pressure on Israel, that Israel is going to be forced to stop these murderous attacks on its neighbors.
So yeah, like he said, Iran could start back, within 12 hours, which I think they like 7 hours to run, like 7.5 hours ahead. All right.
You're not going to.
And they usually do strikes at night, so maybe about 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock today, we can start hearing reports about Iran, has begun, sending waves back, all right, to these Gulf Arab states and these small hats, man, so that could happen, our time, which would be like 12-1, 2-2, okay, and they could begin back those waves, man, but we'll see, but at the end of the day, like I said, they back at it, man. Like there was the shortest ceasefire ever. Okay, so let's go here because he talked about market manipulation. So I got this quick video. Now, when you go into market manipulation, this is for Trump and his cronies. Okay, they're able to do money grabs. Okay, in the midst of this. Okay, because it's an element that's above this because the elites want control. They want to bring in a digital system of control. Okay, and we're gonna go into that. But let's see. I think this might be it here. All right, so he's gonna go into the market manipulation of Trump is always throwing this piece around the deals, and we talking with them, and it's just market manipulation. Like I say, for Trump and his cronies. Okay, the underlings. Okay, the middle management. The elites are allowing, all right, their do boys, okay, to do money grabs. Okay, in the midst of this, man. Okay, but the bigger picture is the global reset to bring in a control grid. All right, but you're gonna get into that. But let's play this.
Trump is stupid enough to take on what Israel wanted to do, which was destroy Iran.
The Financial Times is reporting that traders placed $580 million of oil bets.
Just 15 minutes later, President Trump posted on Truth Social that he was halting planned strikes on Iranian power plants.
Meet Steve Keen, the man who predicted the 2008 crash. As war disrupts global oil, something strange happens. Markets move before the news. Millions were already on the line.
If someone is using this as a way of making profit, then it's playing a game with the lives of people on this planet. Trump was being pressured by Netanyahu, who always wanted to have an attack on Iran. He underestimated the capacity of Iran to fight back. I've been praying that there'd be some way to back out of this war. Nobody can talk about anything other than what's happening in Iran and, of course, what's happening to the oil price and the availability of oil and all the other resources coming out of the Strait of Hormuz that are now being blocked by this conflict. But there's something happening on stock markets and commodity markets as well that's worth discussing. And Ed Conway, who does the empirical research for Sky News, has found something rather fascinating. So let's have a look at it and see what Ed has found, and then let's see what could possibly explain these strange dynamics on the stock market.
It was a really massive moment when Donald Trump came out, did the social media post basically saying that talks were underway. You'll probably remember at that point, markets went crazy. A lot of people selling off oil, buying shares because they saw a big opportunity to make money out of this. And here's what's striking. What we're looking at here is just the volumes, how many people were doing the buying and selling at any given time. If you look at when Donald Trump made that post, it was 11:05 UK time, there was a massive flurry of activity immediately afterwards. Not surprising at all. But here's what is surprising. 15 minutes before he made that post, a group of people made a massive trade. One of the biggest trades that we'd seen in that market up until that announcement. Did they actually know what the president was about to announce? Because when you take that trade on this market and the other oil markets, they have made hundreds of millions of dollars potentially.
That's the scary thing.
And this how you know, all right, that this is just, Trump and his cronies, all right, his the do boys of the elites, okay, are being allowed to do a money grab, okay, because the elite bankers, all right, they don't need to make a quick few $100 million, okay. These are trillionaires, all right. They own, countries and governments and assets and gold. You see, they don't need to make a quick $200 million flip, okay, by manipulating the market. They run the markets. They create the currencies. They govern the markets. Okay, they print the money. Whenever we talk about the Fed print money, well, that's the bankers, okay, allowing more currency to go into, all right, the economy. Okay, so they don't need to manipulate these oil stocks to make a quick few $100 million. The elites are way past it. They want to tank all these currencies. They want to collapse. That's what I want to say. They want to collapse all these currencies, man, and bring in a central bank digital currency. Okay, so let's play this a little more.
Because what's being there is that this is insider trading in some sense. Someone has information about what's going to happen. Trump is going to make an announcement, and 15 minutes before he is going to make that announcement, somebody makes a large trade which will benefit out of the impact of that announcement on the market. It is unthinkable given the scale of damage to the global economy, the number of people who could suffer because of this change in going forward in this year. We face potential famines in countries like India, even famines in countries like Australia, because suddenly they're going to run out of oil to be able to transport food around. If someone is using this as a way of making profit, then it's playing a game with the lives of people on this planet in a way which is beyond reprehensible. And we don't know that it's actually happened. It could be luck, as Ed is saying there. But the possibility is that someone thinks this is a way to make a fortune by gaming the market, knowing the president is going to make an announcement which is going to move the market dramatically 15 minutes after you make a position. You saw the difference in the oil price there. That was from $100 to 85. It's a $15 drop. If you can sell at 100 before it drops for 15 and make other positions to options trading as well to benefit from that change, you make a fortune. Is someone making money out of this war? Is this war not just an ideological battle, not even about security? Is it about gaming the market and making a fortune? And that is horrific that you can even consider that this is what's going on. Again, this is the sort of behavior that comes out of people who don't really care about other people in any sense whatsoever. They're simply trying to profit out of the situation. This just looks like people treating a monumental shock to the global economy as a way of making a profit. One thing which this also makes me think about is Trump, trying to understand Trump's behavior. As I've said before, I think a lot of it comes out of sheer narcissism. He's also cunning. One of the explanations for the war, which makes eminent sense, Trump was being pressured by Netanyahu, who always wanted to have an attack on Iran, and for whatever reason, the political relationship between Trump and Netanyahu, Trump has done it, whereas all the other American leaders before Trump did not want to go into Iran. We know that the Pentagon wanted to invade Iran, but I think also the research the Pentagon did said it's a really bad idea. We might want to be one of the countries we knock over. We knocked over Iraq, we knocked over Afghanistan, etc., etc. The Pentagon had that intention, but they would have potentially done the research and to say, what capabilities does Iran have to fight back, and say no. Now, this time it's gone ahead. America, in particular Donald Trump, and Pete Hegseth, whom I prefer to call Pete Hogsbreath, by the way, the so-called Secretary of War, maybe they just massively underestimated the capacity of Iran to fight back. And so that's the explanation, and they got themselves into this.
So, just a quick matter of fact, I put this link in here. Y'all want to watch the rest of it. All right, but you got that game being played, because it's a few games being played at the same time. All right, but you got that game being played with the market manipulation. That's why you're going to, you're probably going to hear about more ceasefire. You're probably going to hear about more negotiation, but really they're just, market manipulation. Okay, for, people like Donald Trump, his son-in-law, Kushner, Witkoff, and, these real estate, all right, Edomites. Okay, that's in Trump in the circle. All right, but then let's say away from there. Okay, let's say away from there, because now this is real interesting, because this goes into all right, rolling out his digital system, these elites. So this is what the elites own. That's what, like I said, that's what Trump, and his clown cronies, his clown crew, like I said, the Kushners, the Witkoffs, and, billionaires, and, that we don't know. All right. They playing the money grab game. All right. Because if you're worth $2 billion, all right, and you can make you a quick $200-300 million, $500 million in a month. All right, well, that serves you well. Okay, so they're allowing, these devils, the elites are allowing these, these lesser, okay, or the lesser, okay, Edomites, do money grabs. Now, this is interesting. This is interesting. This really says, all right, this really shows that there's certain moves being done in the background. All right, and remember, all these nations have New World Order ambition. All right. And they want to posture themselves going into this new world order with strength. Okay. They want to posture themselves with strength going into this new world order. And Iran, they have new world order ambitions. Now, they one of the more nations with integrity, but at the same time, all right, they still got to play ball, all right, to participate in this new world order. Okay. So China and Russia are their allies, and the Lord's going to use that to actually, all right, cause this war, you know, to get so heated that it's going to destroy everything that the elites are trying to set up. Okay, once they get to the point of making the MOTB, all right, mandatory, well, this war is going to be at a point to where there's no return. They ain't gonna be able to shut it off. Okay, so you gotta look at Iran. Look at China and Russia as the handlers of Iran. You know, to groom them into this new world order ideology, man. Okay, just as you have certain celebrities that are all right. You know, they have handlers. Okay, because you gotta look at nations like Russia and China, America as the gatekeepers. Okay, of the new world order. You see, so as Iran has new world order ambitions. You know, it's one of the more, you know, nations with integrity. All right, but guess what? They still going to be guilty of this rebellion. Okay, because robbing the bank is still robbing the bank. You know, why you robbed it don't matter. You know, whether you robbed the bank because you just wanted some more money, okay, or you robbed the bank to feed your starving children, and you still robbed the bank. Okay, so all these nations are guilty, okay, of participating in this new world order, which is rebellion against the Most High. Okay, so this was interesting. Let's play this real quick, you know, and then we'll expound on it.
A global oil lifeline now comes with a price tag. Iran is tightening control over one of the world's most critical choke points, and it's making tankers pay to pass. At the center of it all is the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow passage through which nearly 20% of the world's oil flows. And now, Iran wants to charge for every barrel that crosses it. Iran turns Strait of Hormuz into toll gate. According to a Financial Times report, Tehran plans to impose a $1 per barrel toll, demanding payment in cryptocurrency from oil tankers to pass through the strategic strait as the Islamic Republic tightens its grip on the narrow waterway, despite a 2-week ceasefire with the United States, under which Iran agreed to temporarily reopen the strait. The report cites Hamid Hosseini, spokesperson for Iran's Oil, Gas, and Petrochemical Products Exporters Union, who says Iran will monitor every ship entering the strait and assess each of the vessels.
Most Christian men think ministry and business don't mix. But what if your business could be your ministry?
Hosseini told FT Iran needs to monitor what goes in and out of the strait to ensure these 2 weeks aren't used for transferring weapons. Earlier, Hosseini said that any tanker passing the strait must email the authorities about its cargo, following which Tehran will inform them of the fee they need to pay in digital currencies, noting that empty vessels can pass free of charge. FT quoted Hosseini as saying, once the email arrives and Iran completes its assessment, vessels are given a few seconds to pay in Bitcoin.
Wait a minute. To pay in Bitcoin? Okay. So now Iran is requesting what? Digital currency. These nations are paying digital currency. Okay, Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is nothing but a cryptocurrency. It's a digital currency. Bitcoin, stable coin, freedom coin, whatever it is, it's all right, a path to the MOTB. Okay. So this is interesting, man. You see, ensuring that they can't be traced or confiscated due to sanctions. All right. So this is interesting that now, all right, Iran is requesting digital currency. Okay, is accepting digital currency for this oil.
Ensuring they can't be traced or confiscated due to sanctions. But this isn't just about money, it's about asserting control. Every vessel will now need to declare its cargo, wait for approval, and then make a rapid digital payment to pass, with Hosseini stressing Iran is not in a rush. And the warning is stark. Ships that attempt to cross without permission could face destruction. This comes even as Iran has once again closed the strait, following the announcement of the fragile truce with the U.S. The move was in response to Israeli attacks on Lebanon, targeting what Tel Aviv says are targets linked to Iran-aligned Hezbollah. In a statement cited by local media, Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps said all ships intending to transit the Strait of Hormuz are hereby notified that in order to comply with the principles of maritime safety and to be protected from possible collisions with mines, they should take alternative routes for traffic in the strait. The 2-week ceasefire had led to a brief reopening of the critical route, offering hope for stability, but that window now appears fragile. Shipping giants like Maersk say they are scrambling to understand the new rules, warning that the situation lacks maritime certainty. The world's second biggest shipping line confirmed that it would continue taking a cautious approach with cargoes. Meanwhile, hundreds of ships are now stuck, waiting for clarity and safe passage. Before the conflict, over 130 vessels crossed daily. Now, just 10 to 15 ships may pass each day. Experts warn the backlog could take weeks, if not longer, to clear. With oil routes disrupted, tensions rising, and a price now placed on passage, the Strait of Hormuz is no longer just a choke point, it's a bargaining chip. When asked about the continuing blockade of the Strait of Hormuz despite the ceasefire, the U.S. Vice President warned that Washington won't abide by its terms of the truce deal if the Iranians are not abiding by their terms.
Vice President, Iran is continuing to block the Straits of Hormuz. Do you have an expectation of when that strait is going to be open?
Well, we've already seen an increase in traffic today. Hopefully, we'll see an increase in traffic tomorrow. We actually think that we are seeing signs that the straits is starting to reopen. I think you guys have probably seen oil prices have come down. So I think the oil markets, the gas markets are seeing the same thing. But the president's very, very clear. The deal is a ceasefire, a negotiation. That's what we give. And what they give is the straits are going to be reopened. If we don't see that happening, the president is not going to abide by our terms if the Iranians are not abiding by their terms.
The Strait of Hormuz, world's most critical choke point, is on the edge. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has now shared a map showing alternative shipping routes in the critical waterway. Here's the catch. Vessels must follow Iran's directions or risk being bombed. According to Iran's news agency, ISNA, transiting ships have been asked to follow the map to avoid naval mines. The status of the Strait of Hormuz is unclear after several media outlets released contradictory reports on whether or not oil tankers were allowed to transit the waterway.
So the main point, is Iran, is taking digital currency, all right, for a rite of passage, man. And like we say, Iran, they bossed up, okay? But within there, we know that the elites will always have a play in the midst of these events that's going on because Russia and China, all right, like I said, they're Iran's handlers in this, man. Okay? And you best believe, they requested, Iran to start taking this digital currency, man, because even if the elites, all right, don't have direct, dealings with Iran, they have direct dealings with you know, Iran's overseers, which is Russia mainly, okay, their chief prince, okay, because according to prophecy of Russia, their chief prince, well, spiritually, they have authority, okay, over Iran, you see? So this is interesting, man, you know, and I want to just watch it and see how the leak's going to play it. You know, they can make it seem like, you know, well, the Strait of Hormuz, you know, where we solved the problem, digital currency was the way to go, you know, to make it seem as if, you know, digital currency solved the crisis. All right, the least can spin it that way, you know, and it's just speculate. We'll see. Okay, well, I just thought this was interesting. So I wanted to go from there. Let's go here. Because remember, the elites want a system of control. Okay, and what's going to be their ultimate system of control is digital currency, and she's finna go into it. Now, I think this is a Christian Edomite, I think like a pastor, but he's going to talk to Catherine Austin Fitts, you know, where she's pretty good when it comes to you know, dealing with digital currency, okay, and the bankers and how they're moving. You know, she's good at identifying, you know, the bankers and their involvement in certain things, all right, in certain events. So let's play this.
In our next conversation, we're going to push ahead. I want you to go with me into the future. We've had conversations about artificial intelligence. We've talked about the future of investing with AI. We even talked about the potential of how AI is going to create flying vehicles and drones and so on and so forth. What I want you to do now with me is enter into a conversation that's going to require you to imagine a future that maybe isn't completely here yet, but is being built for us as human beings. And the person we're going to have do that is someone named Catherine Austin Fitts. She's the president of Solari Inc. She's an investment banker during the presidency of George H.W. Bush. She served as the United States Assistant Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. But what Catherine's been doing for so many years is educating leaders around how our economy works and what the future of our economy may look like and how it could impact human flourishing. It's a topic that not a lot of Christian leaders have heard about. It's a topic that not a lot of church leaders are talking about. And I want to introduce that topic today because I think it's going to be essential for us to know how to navigate this coming future control grid. And I want you to understand that language. And I want you to understand specifically what we're talking about. So to introduce this segment, I'm going to begin by just showing you a short clip. This was back right in the era of 2020. And this was from one of the heads of the central bank as we think about the entire world, telling us about where the future of our currency is going to go and what the plans are for the future. So let's listen to this.
Our analysis on CBDC, in particular for the use of general use, we tend to establish the equivalence with cash. And there is a huge difference there. For example, in cash, we don't know, for example, who's using a $100 bill today. We don't know who is using a 1,000 peso bill today. A key difference with the CBDC is that central bank will have absolute control on the rules and regulations that will determine the use of that expression of central bank liability. And also we will have the technology to enforce that. Those two issues are extremely important, and that makes a huge difference with respect to what cash is.
Would you join me in welcoming?
And just to sum up what he was saying, because he had a thick accent. So he was saying, well, look, today when people use cash, we don't know who's using a $100 bill or $1,000 peso. You know, we don't know. But with the CBDC, we're going to know everything, and we're going to have the technology to enforce certain regulations, which he's talking about his AI, all right, in this whole digital public infrastructure. Okay, So he's talking about a CBDC, central bank digital currency. Okay. And as we say, as you have now, Iran taking what? Digital currency to pass through the Strait. Okay. And see, this is what the elites want. They want control. They want a control system. Okay. Like I said, they let Trump and his little cronies do those little money grabs, but they want a control system. Okay. So you got these elites, they're going for a complete new system. Okay, and they're going to crash all currencies, man. You know, because it went from, you know, the Iran was just going to take the yuan. You know, you had to pay in the yuan. Now it's okay, digital currency now. Okay, and showing you the elites are manipulating, because that's their last play. You know, because they militarily America's finished. All right, but the elites are playing on a different. Remember, they're playing a different chess game. Okay, they don't give a damn about American people, American military. They just use it for what it's worth. Okay, and now, all right, as things are going a certain way, now they're beginning to bet a different way. Okay, that's the advantage that these devils have, that they're able to play both sides. Okay, so militarily, all right, American and the IDF, okay, are getting obliterated. Okay, but economically, the elites still have a play. Okay, the Lord left them one avenue to pull off this new world order. All right, to attempt to pull off this new world order, man. Okay, so let's play this some more. She's going to go into a little more detail.
Catherine Austin Fitts. Welcome, Catherine. Now, we all just heard this speech from a few years ago. Could you describe who was this and what was he saying to us?
He was Austin Parsons, the general manager of the Bank of International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland. And the Bank of International Settlements is the central bank of central banks. The top 63 members of, or the top 63 central banks in the world are members. And what he is describing is their push for programmable money. He called it central bank digital currencies, but it could be stable coins that are hooked up to a social credit system. There are many different ways of doing programmable money. Here's what he told you. He told you the money that you have is not your money, it's their money. So he said it's an expression of central bank liability. And what he said, and of course this is the beauty of AI and software and telecommunications and the different systems we're putting into place, what he said is, we can make the rules centrally. The central bankers can make the rules and we can enforce them using the technology. Now, what that means is we've all lived in a world where the bankers ran monetary policy, but our legislative representatives and our executive branch ran fiscal policy. What he's saying is we can now run fiscal policy through your money, and that means we can do taxation without representation. So that's the message. We intend to have total central control.
So, you know, what she's saying is, you know, the bankers, all right, with all these different currencies, you know, they've been able to control these governments, okay? But then they have to work, you know, the bankers work through these governments to control the people. So now what the bankers are saying with this digital currency, we're not going to need that old style of governing, all right, for control. Now we can directly control the people and remove this old way of governing with legislatures and votes and elections and this and that and all these different bureaucracies and the environmental. Ain't gonna be no, see, the New World Order ain't gonna be no FDA, you know, to determine, all right, if you know, the food is, you know, at a certain standard, you know, USDA, you know, which they don't do it now. They've been so corrupted that they're useless. But, you know, in their New World Order, there ain't gonna be no people to regulate the environment. No, it's just gonna be the elite bankers controlling, all right, the policies of the earth, okay? With this programmable money, they want control, okay? So they're not gonna have to jump through these hoops and buy this president off and buy this person off and try to do the regime change here so they can get, their agendas passed in this region and that region. And no, they're going to do away with that old way of governing because they're going to have a central bank digital currency. Okay, so they're not going to have to work through all these, these government entities. No, they're going to be the government. Okay, and they just plan on having a few representatives in these different regions of the earth. Okay, as a representative, man, but they're going to be behind the scenes controlling the money, controlling the AI. Okay, that's their system of control that they want to bring about, man. So whenever you see digital currency in the mix, it's them niggas, man. Okay. So when I seen that when I ran, I said, here we go. Hey, you see? So let's play this a little more.
Talk a little bit more about how this technology is advancing. We know of digital IDs, we know of currencies, and there's so much happening even with AI. How do we, as just people of faith, start to navigate what is coming? And could you just paint a picture of what this digital control grid might look like?
Right. So if you're a Christian, you know what the mark of the beast is. And in fact, what we're talking about is building the different building blocks to build into the mark of the beast. And if you look at what's happening with digital technology, none of this can happen without 100% digitized financial system. So the two chief components are a digital ID and programmable money. And once you get rid of cash and analog systems, if you look at how the financial system is being sort of organized and fused, we have all these different pieces. And if you talk to most people, they find each piece convenient. The problem is when you get to 100% digital money and you kill cash and you kill any analog system like checks, what happens is the system fuses, bang, and you get, next slide, the digital concentration camp. So the example I used earlier this afternoon is, imagine getting a call in 2028 and someone says, a representative from the government, either you transgender your children or we're going to turn off your money. Unless you take this pharmaceutical or you give it to your children, we're going to turn off your money. We have another pandemic. They say, you're locked down, your money won't work if you leave your home. We've decided you shouldn't buy real meat, you shouldn't eat real meat, we're going to have you buy lab-grown meat. Your money will only work to buy lab-grown meat. So we're talking about a world that if you've grown up with the blessings of liberty that we've all enjoyed, you can't imagine that anyone would do this. However, as a Christian, you can imagine who might do this.
Well, and that's what I love about your perspective. You understand.
Complete control. She says a digital concentration camp. Okay. And this is what the elites want. They want complete control. Okay. They don't need no goddamn FRN notes. Okay. They're done. They created that system. They created the whole world reserve currency. They created that. Okay. Now they on to a whole nother system that gives them ultimate control. And they plan on controlling the world from the land promised to us, man. Okay. That's why they're constantly, all right, just pulverizing, okay, their region, just bombing these places to death. Okay. In their mind, they're just going to come and rebuild and establish, this super state, this super Israeli state. Okay. And just to run the technocracy with this system, man. Okay. The earth is going to be governed by technocrats, put in certain regions, and all right. And like she said, they can just, look, if you don't transgender your children, we're going to cut you off. You can't travel. That's why they want people running to these electric vehicles. Well, guess what? That's just more control. Okay. If you don't comply with certain things, well, look, your car won't start. Okay. You shut your car off. Okay. You can only go this many miles. Okay. You can, and that's why they want people off gasoline cars and on EV cars as well, man. They're herding people to this new world order, man. Okay. So now they're beginning to manipulate, all right, the war, okay, how they want. And like I said, the Lord has given them this avenue, okay, to try to pull this off, man. So let's play a little bit more of this. I already put the link to it in the description box.
Understand that there's an enemy, there's a spiritual war that's going on, that's being waged, that wants to control human beings.
This is not, there is no financial problem. We have a governance problem. We have a secret governance system, and at the root of that secret governance system, it is a spiritual war. And so we are up against Satan.
So talk about faith communities and the role of leaders in this room who lead.
Satan. Okay, this is Satan. All right, Esau, Edom, man, the elites. Wickedness in high places, man. You know.
Faith communities locally in cities all over America and some around the world. What are the ways we can resist this type of control?
So the first thing we can do, I used to have a pastor would say, if we can face it, God can fix it. If we can face it, God can fix it. And that's why it's so important to bring transparency. What I will tell you is one of the most effective tools, and a tool activists use all day long, dealing with this kind of control.
And at the end of the day, the only solution is Yahushua. Okay. The only solution is Yahushua. So, you know, they get, and this the thing, you know, these people can go into this information and break these things down as far as, you know, the practical application of this new world order. But when it comes in the spirit, you see, that's where everybody falls off, man. Okay. So let's go here because this is spiritual wickedness in high places. Okay. And Esau, he's going for it all. And the Lord got it to where he can't pull back. Okay. He can't pull back. All right. That's why it's such a heavy spirit. Okay. On BB to keep this thing going. Cause he just got one thing in mind. Cause the small hats are getting obliterated. But long as this nigga got gas and no fighter jets and some missiles, man, this nigga gonna keep this shit going. Okay. They destroying a lot of tanks. Okay, a lot of IDF soldiers are, you know, being you know, destroyed, you know, with this attempt to do a ground invasion in southern Lebanon. But as long as BB got a few fighter jets, okay, and some missiles, and he gonna keep this thing going, man. You know, this nigga did 100 strikes in 10 minutes. This is a demon on them niggas, man. And that's his only purpose. Okay, because this nigga ain't winning nowhere. And killing civilians, yeah, they're up. The scoreboard is crazy. But for militarily, actually, you know, military effectiveness, man, the idea trash. Okay, but as far as keeping the war going, my nigga BB, man, I think that nigga, if he had one fighter jet, that nigga would keep the war going, man. Okay, to the last jet, to the last missile, man. Okay, but hey, that's the will of the Lord. You know, he playing his role. You know, it says it's Ephesians 6:12. It said, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, of this age." Okay, because ultimately it's going to be their decisions that's going to lead this war to go nuclear. Okay, so their attempt to pull off the new world order is taking this place to a point of no return. Okay, and them attempting to pull this off, this is going to end their own kingdom. This is going to put them in captivity. Okay, it says against spiritual wickedness in high places, man. Okay, so these elites who do the bidding of Satan, in their mind, they're going to establish, okay, a new world order, okay, of complete control, all right, of them, you know, having, you know, control as if they're the Most High, okay, So that this devil was trying to pull this off, man, and the Lord is going to judge this man for this, man. There's a judgment for what this devil is doing, man. Okay, you have to remember there's a judgment prepared for what this devil is doing. All right, this is the book of Nahum, chapter 1. All right, in verse 2 it said, the Most High is jealous, and the Lord revengeth. The Lord revengeth and is furious. The Lord will take vengeance on his adversary. He reserveth wrath for his enemies, man. So there's a reserved wrath for Esau, man. Okay, which the Lord said he will have what war with Amalek from generation to generation. Okay, and Esau, he's just walking further and further into the trap. Okay, and he's walking directly into the wrath of the Lord, man. You see, verse 3, it says, the Lord is slow to anger and great in power. Okay, because the least, in their mind, they're great in power. Okay, because they're able to finance, these different militaries, these different governments. Okay, the Lord has let them tap into certain, technology and witchcraft and, the HARP system, the CERN. And so in their mind, at least they're great in power. Okay, but the Lord is going to show them who's truly great in power. All right, it says, and will not at all acquit the wicked. The Lord hath his way in the whirlwind and in the storm, and the clouds are the dust of his feet. Okay, which those are going to be those chariots, that whirlwind that he's getting ready to send these chariots, man. All right, because these chariots are going to tear down, Esau's kingdom, man. These chariots, the nukes. Okay, so Esau is not going to be acquitted. He's not going to get off on this, man. Okay, you see, these devils, these elites, they're used to squirming all over the place. Okay, manipulating and getting off, man. Well, they're not going to get off with this one, man. Okay, so yeah, I leave it. Yeah, I leave it there. Yeah, I leave it there. Yeah, I end with this one. The brother got. It's the brother Warriors of Yahushua. Isaiah 55:11. It says, so shall my word be that goeth forth out of my mouth. It shall not return unto me void, but it shall accomplish that which I please. And this is why, we know that the elites are bound within the will of the Lord, within the word of Yahweh Bashim Al-Shah. Okay? The elites can't do what they want to do. They can only do what they got to do. Okay? Which is the will of the Lord. You see? That's why they're limited in how they can manipulate this thing. They can only manipulate how the Lord wants them to manipulate, all right, this war, which is going to lead to their own destruction, man. Because it's all written. And none of the words of the Lord are going to come back void. Okay? Only destruction and captivity for Esau, man. Okay? And this third world war is gonna get out of hand. You see? As you can see, ain't no stopping it. Ain't no brakes on it. Nigga try to put the brakes on the nigga. Ain't no brake pads on this, man. Okay, all gas, man. Can't stop, won't stop. All right, he said, but it shall accomplish that which I please, and it shall prosper in the thing whereunto I sent it, man. All right, so we're watching the Lord's words be accomplished in the earth, man. Okay, regardless of what men want to do. Okay, so that's the point, Lord will, you brothers, all right, and you sisters edified once again. I'm going to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh Bahashem, Yahushua Bahashem Rakakodash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples to his younger brothers. And peace and blessings, salutation, hopefully, shalom.